Welcome to the Growing Further podcast, brought to you by the Green Man Group. I'm your host for today, David O'Mara. Through the Growing Further Innovation Awards, we in the Green Man Group are looking to identify and reward early stage businesses from across the world who are placing innovation and sustainability at the core of their strategies. This podcast is a series of conversations with successful entrepreneurs from a really broad range of businesses who have also placed innovation at the forefront of their businesses and see it as a key part of their success. Aisling Murray from Beta Festival, founder and director. Thank you very much for coming in today.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks so much, David.
We're going to talk about the Beta Festival in a little sec, but can you give people just a little bit of background to you and your career so far and what got you to this point?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Highs, lows and everything in between?
Yeah, so how far back? I mean, this villain origin story, is it? I mean, I am...
Hero origin story, please.
I'm like the second eldest of 5 kids, so I think
I'm the youngest of 6.
Okay, so
but
big families.
It's not about me. Yeah.
I feel like it gives you good organisational skills, you know, and you also have to be kind of like creative and competitive in the way that you approach things. So I was definitely organising my siblings into like plays and choirs and things and making them perform for a young age. So I definitely I was interested in arts and culture, arts and creativity, but always kind of a producer. And like, honestly, I feel like I can kind of trace that back to being a kid. But I studied English and philosophy in college. I wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do, but I really loved reading and writing. And that gave me a pretty good basis.
You did the right thing and studied something you're interested in, which lots of people don't do.
Well, I also went to college in Galway, so I also got a pretty good social education, I have to be honest there.
Well, one of my older brothers went to college in Galway, and none of the rest of us were allowed to go to college in Galway after him. So,
yeah, off the list.
I know what you're talking about. You can go anywhere you want apart from there.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's a good spot though. But yeah, I got pretty interested in theatre when I was there, and ended up then deciding to do a master's in theatre and performance in Trinity, which was super interesting, and I suppose started to give me a better understanding of like the theatre landscape in Ireland and of the kind of cultural sector. And, you know, I worked very shortly then in film and television. I thought that there would be more money and more opportunities there, but it was 2008. And there was not really.
Timing was excellent.
Yeah, very good. And then I thought maybe I wanted to be a playwright or a director, and I tried some of those things. And to be honest, I actually, I got some really good advice from mentors along the way. That's one thing I'd say is actually, I've never been afraid to ask people to go for coffees or a cup of tea. And it's been hugely beneficial.
Put yourself out there.
Big time.
One of our directors has a saying, a phrase, you need to put yourself in danger doing a bit of business. So that means getting out there, having the coffees, lunches, chatting, whatever.
Exactly. I remember meeting with Rasha Goen, who was the director of the Dublin Fringe Festival at the time, and she was the youngest ever director, I think. Really brilliant, absolute powerhouse, amazing supporter of young voices and artists. And she, you know, she came to see a show that I directed and pretty harshly was like, what are you trying to say? You know, like, I think, I'm not sure if this is what you want to do. I think that maybe you're more a producer. And at the time I was a little bit like, oh, you know, like taken aback, but she was right, you know, and I really thought about it afterwards. And
feedback was a bit too direct. But, initially. Yeah.
But it's good. You need that sometimes, you know. So then I produced in theatre for about 10 years, and mostly in Ireland with Dublin Fringe Festival, but also toured some shows. So went to New York and London and Russia.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of I was kind of learning as I was going, and I realised that I probably needed institutional knowledge and kind of to learn from within an organisation. And a woman that I'd worked with in Dublin Fringe also, Jessica Hilliard, had started working in Science Gallery and said that it was a job coming up as a production assistant. So I applied and I got that. And that was, to be honest, that was a huge turning point in my career. Like, I mean, I love theatre and I still love theatre, but going into Science Gallery just opened my eyes to a whole different type of work. You know, I was in Science Gallery for 8 years. I started production assistant, then producer, and by the time it closed, I was right up there till the closure. I was the head of programming, you know, but it really expanded, I suppose, my interest. Like, I've always been kind of interested in audiences, like, during my master's, my research was around the evolving role of the spectator. Okay. And so I've always really kind of tried to think about the way that audiences and people engage with arts and culture, engage with events. Yeah. But through Science Gallery, that took on a whole other element, because the work there was informed by, or they would call it informal learning. Right. And informal learning is essentially where you learn outside of formal structures like school or college or whatever.
Non-curriculum type stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. It's learning through your hobbies and interests. Yeah. And I'm going to get this wrong now. I need to look up the exact statistic. But basically, the way that you learn through your hobbies and interests, like, if you're in the classroom, you might have to have something repeated 30 times. But if you're learning through play, it's something like 3. Those numbers are not correct, by the way, but it is something like there's a radical difference there between the way that you learn through, hobbies and interests. And so with Science Gallery, we would take kind of broad themes that would apply to, people's everyday lives and communicate scientific research through those. Okay. So it was really educational while not feeling like it was educational. It was really playful. So that really kind of brought out a
lighter way of educating or communicating.
Yeah, and it was a totally different way of working for me, it was really, and you got to work with so many different researchers and scientists, really collaborative. I mean, definitely in theatre you learn a lot of collaborative skills, but through Science Gallery, again, it took on a whole other dimension, and it also just brought out a different kind of socially engaged element of the work as well. It felt really rewarding. It felt really like the work that I was making was really impactful, and you can kind of see that.
So you talked about trying to get institutional experience, I think is what you said. So my perception of the theatre world, producing a production or a show is like fly with the seat of your pants, chaotic, stress. Yeah. Is it going to be okay? I'm getting sick with nerves, and then it's all right on the night type thing. Is that fair?
And it's all on you. I mean, I think Ireland is a small country, and we punch way above our weight in many things for a small country. But in the arts and cultural sector, there isn't a lot of formal training. You know, so a lot of people rise quite quickly through the ranks if they're able to organize, get things done. Like being a producer, it's basically getting things done. You know, like it's probably having a good network that you can pick up the phone. Shit done, don't worry. It's probably being able to have a big network that you can pick up the phone to people, but also just be organised and make things happen on a timeline. But
which you can build that network quickly in Ireland, but then it's finite, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. But also it means that you rise very quickly, and there's not a huge number of places to go necessarily. And also, you don't have that kind of formal training. So it can be difficult for people as well. It's not the same as going into an organisation where you're there for years and you kind of learn management and leadership skills. It doesn't have the same trajectory.
There's no graduate program.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah.
And so you go to the Science Gallery, and it's got that more of a, I suppose, a reliable paycheck.
Big time. Trinity College. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And did you? I suppose my question is: you talked about the audience. Do you consider the people coming in the door, the audience? Were you putting on a show in the Science Gallery?
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, and maybe explain.
No, absolutely.
Take a step back, explain what Science Gallery is, and then.
Yeah, so I mean, Science Gallery was a space that put on programs around art and science, and so we'd always kind of take a theme, say maybe intimacy, so everybody's kind of able to relate to intimacy. So instead of calling the show neuroscience, you'd call it intimacy, but you would talk about some of the same themes, and you'd find ways to kind of connect with people's everyday lives through exhibits and events and workshops. So we had a target audience of 15 to 25-year-olds, the idea being that that's the age at which people are kind of deciding what they're going to do next with their lives and whether they're going to go to college or not. And so you're kind of really reaching people at an impactful time of their life. And the idea was, I suppose, to be able to communicate complex scientific ideas and research and make it relevant to those people. So we were always kind of considering the audience coming in the door. In a way, the exhibitions in Science Gallery had more in common with theatre, which is probably how and why I fit in so easily, than it did with traditional art galleries. You would kind of start with this, idea and different pieces of research and scientists, and then begin to build out the ideas from there. And it was brilliant. It's very sad that it closed. Hopefully, it'll open again in the future. But
so, not to traumatize you too much, but how long did you work there, and when did it close? Why did it close?
I was there for 8 years, and it closed, I think, 2021. It was kind of the end of the pandemic. And I mean, it closed for
one of the phases of the pandemic.
Yeah. It kind of closed for a huge variety of reasons. You know, some of that obviously was financing. Some of it was that the organizational structure no longer worked. Like when Science Gallery started, they thought that it was going to be, you know, there would be a team of 10 people and there would be 50,000 visitors a year. By the end, there was a team of 30 people and there was 500,000 visitors a year. Like that's insane for like, it was like a 400 square meter space. It's tiny, you know, so it was successful beyond what anybody ever thought it would be. You know, Science Gallery Dublin was the first in the Science Gallery International Network. You know, the international network then set up science galleries in London, Bangalore, Melbourne, Detroit, Atlanta, Mexico, and a lot of those are still going, you know. But I think, you know, in those 10, 12 years, the model never changed and never updated. So it was set up for a model that was for something different. So in a way, you know, it's understandable that it needed to be reimagined. And, you know, Trinity have committed to reopening it in the future. So, you know, hopefully that happens. But I think it probably does need to be something kind of new and different. And also, you know, there is a life cycle to these things
bigger
sometimes.
Than 400 square meters as well.
You know, sometimes with these life cycles, it's it allows other things to emerge, you know. I mean, for one thing, Beta Festival wouldn't probably exist because I loved my job in Science Gallery. I probably would have found it very difficult to leave.
Okay, so you got your institutional experience and sadly that ended out of your control, but what was the next step? Was Beta Festival next?
Yeah, it was. So after Science Gallery closed, I guess I was kind of taking time out to figure out what I wanted to do next. You know, would I do something completely different? Like I went off to the Aran Islands for like 3 days and like on a little like self-imposed, no technology, silent retreat to like think about my life and figure out what I was going to do.
Did that work?
Well, it did a little bit. It was good to like take the time. To be honest, it was good also to take the time to grieve. You know, it can be like it's a difficult
thing. Life for 8 years.
Yeah, leaving any job that you really love. You know, and it meant that I was able to properly reflect on the pieces that I really loved. You know, rather than being reactionary. Like, you know, at first I was like, well, maybe I'll just change career completely. But actually, I was like, well, no. There's all of these really you know, beautiful pieces of the work and what I learned while in Science Gallery that I want to take forward. And some incredible people that I worked with there, you know. And so some of those ideas, that idea of kind of being able to communicate complex ideas or, you know, current research or topics and ideas to a general public was something that really appealed to me. And while in Science Gallery, a lot of what I had been interested in was like AI and creativity, immersive technology. It was a lot of on the kind of experimental technology and art side. And I started, when I was thinking about what I was going to do, I started to realize actually there wasn't really anything in that sphere in Ireland. You know, I think there's a lot of festivals and institutions internationally that are in the art and technology sphere or digital art sphere, but not really in Ireland. And the more I thought about it, the more I was kind of looking at, you know, some of the biggest tech companies in the world are based in Ireland. We should have a really critically engaged public. We should, you know, have a really digitally literate public. And I wasn't sure how much some of that was coming across. And so I was interested to see how something like Beta could take some of the ideas from Science Gallery of putting on like programs and cultural programs, exhibitions, workshops, talks, and maybe begin to communicate some of these in an accessible way.
So day one, Beta Festival. Did you come up with the name first or the idea first?
Good question,
how did you get going?
The name, I mean, we had like a document full of loads and loads of names. It's very hard to choose a name. I think in the end, we were just like, this is good enough. Because it was never going to, you know, you're never going to be like, yes, that is perfect. Or maybe other people do. But for us, we were like, no.
Alpha Festival was taken, so you took
Well, I liked that Beta kind of, it implied it was experimental. It also implied it was to do with technology. So I was like, okay, that's good enough. But actually it came from a coffee I had with Fiach in the Digital Hub. So Fiach also used to work he was the director of the Abbey for years and has done loads of things for the arts. Like he's a really impressive CV. And now he's the CEO of the Digital Hub. And so I had been doing a talk over there with Robin Price on an artwork that he had created, and myself and Fia got chatting, and I was like, oh, we should go for a coffee. We had a coffee, and I was like, oh, at the tail end of our conversation, I was kind of just telling him about Science Gallery and what had gone on, and what I was thinking of doing next. And at the very end of the conversation, I was like, I think I might also start an art and technology festival. And it was really like this throwaway piece at the very end of our full conversation.
Now look at you.
I know. What did I do? What did he do? And he was like, you should do that, and we'll support it. Like, we'll invest in it. And it kind of took me back. I was like, oh wow, there's something really in this idea, And also, to be honest, I have to say, like, Fiac's an incredible supporter. If you also look at his entire CV, I was like, okay, this man is backing this festival and thinks that it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Like, there's something to be looked at here. So
it may not be a crazy idea.
Yeah. And so from there, I guess started developing the idea a little further, like looking at other international models, what we might want to follow.
But this is just you with a laptop, or
very much so.
scratching out some thoughts.
Now there is a we, because I do have we have like a seasonal team and like a producer and researcher, but a lot of the time I say we, and it's just me. Hi guys, I am the social media team and the marketing team. But the Digital Hub have co-founded the festival, so I have all of the support from them. So in fairness, I do have the support of their marketing team, their PR.
But you didn't on day one.
But I didn't on day one.
Months. Yeah. But how long from that coffee until you had, okay, this is my job now?
Is it my job? Yeah, no. Like probably the coffee was in maybe April, so that would have been 2022. And the festival happened in November 2023. Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, immediately I went. To be honest, immediately I saw that Science Foundation Ireland's applications for the Discover program had opened, and that's their public engagement program. And I was very familiar with that funding model from Science Gallery, so right. I was like, okay, do you know what? I was like, I can write these applications. Yeah. I was like, I'll put one in. I'll try it.
You knew how that system worked.
Yeah. So I was like, I'll start committing the idea to paper. And it was good because it also made me have to focus on like what the festival was, like really early on, because that was, May. That was like a month after I'd had that coffee with Fiach. And we put it in, and that November we found out that we got that funding. And to be honest, it was kind of that moment that changed it. Like, I mean, at that stage, the Digital Hub had given me desk space and everything, and they were like supporting me in doing it. But once we got that funding from Science Foundation Ireland, it kind of shifted it into something a bit more, definitely more real, but tangible, kind of bigger as well, So yeah, that was kind of where that part came.
Okay, so let's delve into a little bit about what Beta Festival does. What are you talked about trying to make complicated concepts easy to understand?
Yeah, don't ask me to explain them right now, but
we won't go too much into the complicated concepts. We'll talk about, give us the Ladybird version. But what's Beta Festival? Who's your target audience? What are you trying to do for them?
For sure. So I guess there's kind of like tiers of audience, because it is similar to Science Gallery. It's kind of looking at the way to capture the imagination of the general public, So I guess in developing the festival, I was looking at everything from the National Artificial Intelligence Strategy to the EU AI Act to plans for digital transformation both nationally and internationally, or at a European level. So it's really looking at how some of those like policy and regulation elements are happening at a local to national to international scale, and how do you begin to make some of those ideas accessible, both through access to the technology, but access to the ideas as well to the general public. I think that particularly in the past year and a half since ChatGPT, there's been a lot of hype. I mean, for years there has been as well, but there's been a lot of hype around artificial intelligence.
Well, it's really in the mainstream now.
It really is, But the thing is, if the general public aren't getting access to some of these things, it's good, like all well and good that the government want to position Ireland as a leader in artificial intelligence and in immersive technologies, but how are the younger generation, or how are kind of the general public, able to access some of those ideas or the technologies? So it's, through the exhibitions with Beta Festival, it's trying to make some of those a little bit more accessible. So like having the technology itself accessible, but also having interesting artworks that like convey the way that some of these technologies work. Okay. So take, for example, last year we had an event called Prompt Battle. And it's this like gamified event where, two people are put head to head and are asked to come up with a prompt for a text to image software. Okay. So it might be like, so sometimes they might be given the prompts. So they might be like, okay, create an image of an astronaut walking down Grafton Street. Right. And the two people have to try and come up with it. And then the screens will show in the room both of their images, and the audience vote for which image is best.
Okay.
So it's really playful, really funny, and like they come up with really funny prompts, really funny images. But at the same time, you're starting to kind of learn and understand the way that the technology works, because sometimes they enter a word and it won't allow it, or so you're starting to understand these things, or
which is where the hilarity comes in.
Exactly. Or take, for example, last year we had a piece by artist Joanna Walsh called Miscommunication, which was an AI version of Countess Markovich. So she trained it on like Markovich's diaries and also first-person accounts at the time, so that you could have this conversation with an AI version of Countess Markovich. So again, really like playful and fun, but at the same time you're starting to kind of understand how this works or the potential of it, so it's kind of through that playful piece that we're out trying to access a broader audience. And then there's the conference, which I guess deals a little bit more with some of the detailed themes and ideas.
That's a panel of experts or...
Exactly, a panel of talks,
tables,
workshops, exactly. So like this year we're doing an assembly on AI and art, I mean, Ireland punches way above its weight with researchers, particularly in AI and ethics. It's really impressive.
Where are the main institutions where that's happening?
All over, to be honest. I genuinely couldn't just pick out one, but I mean the two primary funded research centres would be Insight and Adapt. And Adapt are one of the research partners for the Beta Festival. So when I say that the programming is informed or underpinned by tech and digital literacy, it actually is, because we work with them to ensure that we're communicating all of those ideas correctly. But obviously in the past year there's been this establishment of the AI Advisory Council, which is amazing that exists, like really brilliant. But there's not really anyone contributing in terms of art and culture. And that's fair enough also, because the investment and the expertise in the first instance does need to look at industry and academia and those things. But are people in the arts world, are they threatened by AI? Do they see it as an opportunity, or are they not thinking about it at all? That's a good question. It's probably a mix, to be honest. I'm sure there's some people not thinking about it at all. Some people also who are like sick of hearing about it, because it's like there's a lot of like hype and kind of tech utopian stuff online all the time, or fear-mongering stuff. Neither is helpful, you know. And this is where I guess engaging critical thinking, which is something Science Gallery would have done and something that we're really trying to do with Beta Festival, is to like engage people to be able to make up their own minds. Like not say that this is like right or wrong, because there's a lot that happens already within the academic sphere and even the industry sphere. So like Future Human or Dublin Tech Summit, whereas with Beta, again, it's trying to like access the more general public and the arts community. But like with AI, I mean, there's a little bit of fear, and people are right to be wary. Like, what way is the data trained? That's a big question. Like, what's it going to mean in the future? We also saw the strikes over in the US, the writers' strikes.
Because that's my uneducated mind. That's what I think about when I think about it.
So like there's a lot of questions there. So I think it's, what's interesting is when people talk about AI, often in the media, arts and culture is held up as an example because it's juicy and it's accessible to people. It's something that people can kind of understand. And yes, we don't really have policy and regulation around it yet. Now, that's not to say that it isn't coming down the line or people aren't thinking about it or looking at it, but that's something that we really want to explore a bit more with the festival and bring those people together. So it's also not just like, siloed groups of people coming together, that we really are bringing together industry, research and artistic practice. So on the Friday of the festival this year, so this will be the 1st to the 17th of November, 2 weeks. And on the 1st, is the beginning of the conference, and we're going to do an assembly on AI and art. And it'll be workshop-based, like a conversation-based workshop, where we'll bring together a lot of those people from industry, from research, and from culture, including artists, but funders, and ask some of those questions around, like, okay, what do we need to think about in terms of IP and copyright, or what do we need to think about in terms of ownership, or like what needs to be thought about in terms of like funding, you know? Like the Arts Council last year published their first ever digital art policy, which is brilliant that it exists. But I mean, by their own admission, there is more funding required in this area because it's not... it's expensive to put on this kind of work, to put on work that is using cutting edge technology, immersive technology, AI technology. It requires a lot of power. So there's just a lot of different considerations that need to be taken into account. Yeah.
So about the festival itself. You said it goes from the 1st to the 17th of November.
Yeah.
Is it in a particular location? Is it across the city?
It's the first 2 weeks of November. The intention there was, the clocks will have just gone back, so it's nice and moody and dark, which is a nice time for a festival like this. But it also overlaps then with Irish Design Week and Science Week, which just means more access for audiences. And, Research Ireland are a big supporter of the festival. So it's part of the official Science Week programme this year as well. But it primarily takes place up at the Digital Hub. So we have 2 exhibition spaces there and workshop spaces. But then there'll also be some elements in Palace Studios at IMA this year. We'll be working with them on their living canvas screen, which is really exciting, and in NCAD Gallery. So it's primarily up and around Dublin 8. Yeah. And, again, that's intentional in the first few years to kind of try and keep it quite geographically tight so that you're creating that buzz. Because, I guess the community of people interested in art and technology in Ireland at the moment, it can be quite fragmented because people identify in different ways. Some people are visual artists with an expanded digital practice. Some people are digital artists. Some people are engineers. Some people are creative coders. Some people are creative technologists. So people kind of sit across different sectors, so
and you want to appeal to a broad church.
Exactly. And you want to create a moment for those people to come together. There are things that happen specifically for the film industry or the gaming industry, but actually creating something that is more broad for people, because people are using the same tools, so they're able to share tips and skills and the way that they do things and approach things. So if anything, part of the intention with Beta was also to create this punctuation point in the year where people can just come together, and that's where I think keeping it geographically tight, where people can bump into each other and you have that opportunity for cross-pollination, for informal networking. And there's interesting research and stories around even the design of offices, or was it Disney or Pixar, and the way that they laid them out. I'm not saying that we're doing the exact same thing, but just this idea of when you're getting all of these people in one place, how you can facilitate people bumping into each other and chatting and just bolster that sense of community.
And for people who want to find out more information, where do they get tickets? And
so it's betafestival.ie. So we just announced the festival dates are 1st to the 17th, and we will be doing the full programme launch in the middle of September. So you can subscribe to our newsletter or follow us on Instagram, and keep an eye out.
Excellent. Aisling Murray, thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
I just want to thank you for tuning in today, and really hope that you enjoy that conversation as much as I did. To find out more information, please check out growingfurther.io or follow Growing Further on LinkedIn.